Thanks for joining us on Not Boring CEs, where we don't think you should be bored to death while getting your continuing ed. Keep listening here, then hop over to notboringces.com to get all your online CE credits. All right, y'all, let's get to learning. Alexis Overstreet is a licensed clinical social worker, recovered burnout, and has 6 years of practicing, coaching, and speaking about self-care for therapists. In the areas of body-based mental health, she has 3 years of coaching and speaking about healing from and reducing burnout for CEO therapists who are scaling their practices and/or building multiple streams of income. Her training and practices of transformation include certified brain spotting practitioner and consultant, TRE, that's trauma release exercises, certified provider, level 2 MELT method instructor, level 1 internal family systems practitioner, and interpersonal neurobiology practitioner. It is her absolute jam to meet CEO therapists and digital CEOs alike at the intersection of running and operating traditional practices while scaling to revolutionary wellness brands. Welcome, Alexis Overstreet. Welcome back to Not Boring CEs. I'm your host, Allison Ferrier. I'm here with Alexis Overstreet, and we are talking about creating a self-care plan that you will actually follow. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting me. It's so beautiful to be here with you.
Yay. So for a long time, you have been kind of my self-care follow. Like, you're somebody that I follow on social, that I have followed through your career, that I value the way that you come at self-care. And so I'm glad to share you with everybody here. Can we start by talking about why a self-care plan is necessary?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Let me just also say it means so much to me for you to say that, because I started private practice with the checklist that you had back in the day. So thank you for inviting me, and I love being here. But one of the reasons, I'm going to grab my notes, one of the reasons that it's helpful for us to just have a self-care plan in general is because it saves time. Mm-hmm. We can just pull it up. I like to use the example of having a budget. Sometimes when we have a budget and we actually do the budget, we save more money. It's like the difference between, I don't know, maybe spending, money for 10 coffees, at Starbucks a week versus 5. You start noticing like, okay, this is adding up to $240 like a month. Maybe I need to, put this in half and, get 140 or something like that. And so when we actually have the budget, we do different things. We can reach our goals a little bit different. And when we have a self-care plan, we can reach that. The biggest thing around self-care planning is that we don't learn to take care of ourselves. Mm-hmm. We learn how to grind. We learn how to go to school. We learn how to get the things that, that we need to get in order to be successful in this very capitalistic country that we live in. And along the way, no one really teaches us like how to take care of ourselves. And mm-hmm. The interesting thing about that is that we are also taught to increase what we do. We're always, how do we measure up? How do we do different? And so that means also that the things that we're doing in our life are requiring more work. Mm-hmm. And we Absolutely. Never talk about the things that we need to do. And so the self-care I needed to do when I was in graduate school is not the self-care that I needed when I worked in community mental health. And it's definitely not the same type of self-care that I need as a private practitioner and CEO. And mm-hmm. It probably won't be the same that I need in retirement. And so having a self-care plan is really, my hope for myself continually, and the people that I work with and the world, uh-huh. the social worker, is that we can really redefine what self-care means, and so, having a plan kind of puts it in one central location. Some of the other things I have down is that, number one, we remember it's helpful to have a baseline. If we don't know what our baseline is for the things that are, happening to us in our life, then we don't really know like what we need to level up on or what we need to do that's differently or that's different in general. So So those are a couple of things. I can talk a whole
Yeah.
about, why a plan is necessary, but the big thing is that we live in a very different world now. It's a digital world. And many of us were not raised in a digital world. I mean, your kids and my nephew, when they get to, be adults, they're used to it. But right now we're not used to it. And so our body is responding differently. And so we need to think about how to take care of ourselves in a different way.
That's so good. There's so much about what you said that I'm like, yes, yes. Just thinking about how I was just emailing my business coach and I was like, I realized like I have everything for the next 2 quarters laid out beautifully for the business. I know exactly what my goals are. I know exactly what I'm going to do to get there. I know the things that might come up that would get in the way and how to manage that.
Yeah.
And I said
Yep.
to him, but my life, like I'm skipping one of the steps in my skincare routine every night. Like it's like these little life things that I lump into. I feel like there's self-care and there's also maintenance, which is a woman I'm starting to feel some resentment around. Like the things that we call self-care that are just maintenance.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
It still
that's
is
a
a way. I think it still is a way that we take care of ourselves. I think
mhm.
that because I feel you on that. It's just so commercialized, right? You
Yes.
just see it and it's overdone. And so we just kind of feel like, this is what we do to take care of ourselves. And it is a part of self-care. And also,
Hmm.
it's at the end also. So,
Yeah, yeah. And so like just talking to him because he very much encourages like planning your life also. And that being more important often than planning your business
yeah.
because it's all cyclical, right? Everything feeds into its buddy. And how like as like my daily walks have stopped being daily, my like these things stopped being a priority as I got busy with other things. And I can have all these work things written down, but I don't have my self-care written down. I don't have it prioritized in that way.
I see that so much now at the end of the year, just as, I'm moving into this like self-care burnout expert status, right? Because I
Hmm.
spend so much of my time, working on it for myself, but also in the work that I do with others. I see so much of like, everyone is doing end of year goal planning and, what do you want your 2024 to look like? And what is this? Everybody is doing all of this. And it's like, I see a lot of people leveling up. I do. I see so many people leveling up. And so what is that also going to look like for your care? Because if we're
Hmm.
leveling up in what we're doing in life, maybe what you did 5 years ago is not going to work the same way.
Yes. Yeah. And the
Yeah.
things that we call self-care aren't always self-care, just like everybody's individualized like self-care preferences. Like what you call self-care might not be self-care for me. It might not be truly rejuvenating. But
Right.
also like there's an intra experience with that too, where the self-care of 5 years ago for me is no longer self-care. And I have
That's
to
so true.
refind it.
That is so true. One of the things that I love to talk about is like how dynamic, self-care planning is. And I love that you said too earlier, Allison, that, you know, there is resentment sometimes around, the things that you feel like you need to do, or, like your daily walks, you don't necessarily get your daily walks in. And what I really want also people to know is that self-care planning, at least from the way that I'm doing it, I'm very body focused and,
Mhm.
body-based focused, is really to validate the experience that we're just human, right? So
Mhm.
if we actually have this self-care plan where we have, our stressors listed and the stress that actually happens in our body, and what are our body signs, what are the signals that our body is given to us, and when are those signals like escalating and changing, then we can just respond to them. We don't have to have the shame or the guilt associated with, oh my goodness, I'm not doing this. Of course, because life is lifing, right?
Mhm.
And also you can just go back to this thing and say, okay, this is what my body is telling me right now. These are the signs that are actually showing up. What do I need to do in order to respond to that? That is no different than looking at key indicators in your goals, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
It's okay. We're at the end of quarter 1, and we had this, to keep it simple, $10,000 goal, and we're at 7. What do we need to do differently? And that
Mhm.
is how we also need to look at self-care, only because we live in a very electrifying and chaotic world right now, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about like some of the dynamic piece of a self-care plan comes with like categorization. Can we
Mhm.
talk about like why and how to categorize?
Yes. And so that's a little bit of what I just talked about around you know, getting a baseline for how your body shows up. So I guess I just need to, just state that I am a body-based like mental health clinician. I focus on the body. I focus on fascia. I focus how the body responds. I focus on, how stress resides in the body, how trauma resides in the body. There are other ways that people and other angles that people come from self-care. I come from a perspective of, how is your body speaking to you? How is your body responding to what's going on in the environment, to sessions, as therapists, but also, other people who are just working in the world? Like, how is your body responding to this? And how can you listen to the signs from your body?
Mhm.
So that is my perspective in general. And when we talk about categorizing, I like to put it in, sometimes it depends on what type of self-care plan you're looking at. Sometimes they can get pretty, in depth, depending on, the output of things that you're doing in this world. The more
Mhm.
people, I feel like the bigger our ripple, the more things we need to do to take care of ourselves, just because we're touching, we're having more vibrations, reverberate back to us. And so we sometimes oftentimes feel that in our body in different ways, right?
Mhm.
And then also like how we show up in the world, we just, we may have, different, we may be, clairvoyant or, different things like that, different clairs.
Mhm.
But some of the categories, the main categories I love to talk about are stressors and stress. And as therapists, it's like, oh, I know what that is. We talk about that all the time. And also when we're in conversation, when I'm in conversation with my colleagues, or, being a consumer online, or listening just to, people who are not in our profession, what I hear is we talk about stress as it's in the ether, like it's somewhere around, but stress actually shows up in your body. And when I ask people, how do you know you're stressed? They literally don't have words. They're like, I
Mhm.
just know what, and then defense mechanisms come up, and they're just like,
Mhm.
what do you mean? I just know I'm stressed. And so understanding the difference between stressors, of course, we know that we know what it is. It can also be incredibly useful to review. And so stressors are the things that happen that cause your body to respond in a certain way. Stressors are often, they can be, constructive, they can be, chaotic, they can be good, bad, however you want to categorize that. But they are the things that that our body responds to threat with. Right. And
Mhm.
so as a result, our body is showing up in a way to minimize that threat, right? To create an equilibrium in our body. And so stressors can be, of course, work. It can be clients. It could be content in a session. It can be, perusing the internet, the different things, in 5 minutes, if we're scrolling, we probably see 100 different images. Think about that.
Hmm. Yeah. Oh yeah, all that stimulation that like I don't think about when I'm scrolling. I think I'm relaxing when I'm
Mhm.
scrolling. I know better cognitively, but you know, but I think like, oh, like I'm just sitting here I'm scrolling, just filling some time, no big deal. But you're right, like that's input into
It
me.
is it is input. And so those can be stressors, because things that are important to us are things that are showing up online. And so that can be a stressor. Relationship things can be stressors. These are things that are happening that we're responding to. And as a result, the stress happens in our body. So stress is also a major category, right? And so when we talk about stress, I just get down and dirty with people. How do you know you're stressed? And they're just like, I don't know, my heart is increasing. I get heart palpitations, or I can't breathe, or I hold my breath, or I get sweaty palms, like all those things that start coming up. And when we talk about that, I get into different categories. So we can talk about that if you want, but stress is one. And then, so we talk about stressors, we talk about stress, like how is it showing up in your body? And then we talk about body signs. And so how does your body respond? And the frequency of the response of the different like the different categories or types of stress, right? And so say for instance, the tears, I talk a lot about tears. And so say for instance, if your body is whispering to you, because our body is always talking about, stress, like we have whispers and then we have like the loud talking, and then we have like where our body is yelling and our body is like, you need to sit down, right?
Yeah.
So the whispers, people may get like a headache. It's like a stress headache. I haven't been drinking my water. I've had, a lot of stressors happening in during my day. I have a lot of expectations that I need to meet and all these things that are happening. And if we don't respond to that or do the things in our body to discharge that out of our body, then we may start to notice that we get migraines, right? And so the stress in our body but usually progresses to a point where it's trying to talk to us more and more, and it's asking us to do the thing. And so I like to categorize it in 3 different ways: stressors, stress, and then body signs. And then how can we be in more communion with our body so that we can do the things to discharge the stress? Because that's what it's all about. How can we get it out of our body?
Yeah, I'm thinking about those body signs too. Like I like your categorization of like it's whispering, it's talking, it's yelling. Because like when I was younger, I'm totally oblivious. I think I've spent most of my life kind of like a balloon head, not attached to a body. Like I've been really good at just not being connected and being very cerebral and in my head, right? When I
Right.
was younger, I went through this spate of time where I would just break bones all the time. And that's what would ground me. I would first get, I'd have tummy troubles for
Yeah.
like months, and then I'd get sick and like have vertigo for a week or something like that. So it's like starting to talk to me louder.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then I'd have to like break my damn bones
Uh-huh.
for me to sit my ass
Yelling.
down.
That's definitely the yelling.
Yeah. And it's
Yeah.
often because I'm in my head so much and not paying attention in a natural klutz. And so the combination of like not being grounded in my body and not listening would
Right.
lead to like taking more on, not
Mhm.
listening to the whispers and the talks and waiting for it to scream at me. I've gotten much better about it as I've gotten older, but I
Right.
still, stuff still comes up.
Right. And I will tell you too, just in my work with folks, because I'm a social worker, right? I am at my heart, I'm macro, and I also,
Mhm.
and I'm a macro person who does micro work to facilitate larger change. And so, when I'm working with folks, I try to not invalidate the process that we're human, right? So we're naturally going to flow between what I like to call like tier 1 and tier 2. We're naturally going to flow between the whispers and the yells. I mean, it's just, but when we get to the yells, like what are some things that we need to do? Because what we do when we get to the yells, it is not the same thing that we need to do when the whispers are happening.
Right. And I think about how like the things that we need to do when we get to the yells often feel really big and impossible, right? Like it might be taking time off work. It might be
Mhm.
um, making major changes to our lives.
I love that you said that, because what I try to walk through people, and yells are not necessarily, I would not say that's something that you need to take off work. Now, maybe the screaming, yes.
Oh, yells versus screaming. Okay, got it. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
thinking of
right.
screaming.
This is
Okay.
why it's helpful, right? This
Yeah,
is why
yeah.
it's so helpful, because we get to define and talk about like what does our body, what are whispers, loud talking, and then the screaming and yelling, like what does that mean
Mhm.
for us? And so and oftentimes, we're talking about the self-care that you're already doing, right? Oftentimes we're already doing these things, but we just don't have them down, right? So it's kind of
Right.
like that budget. Sometimes we are, cutting back here and there, but we don't really have a baseline to look at for us to say, okay, we could probably not drink 5 Starbucks a week. you
Uh-huh.
And so it may be something like increasing the workout, okay, I'm having more migraines, my headaches were just like, they were whispering, they were saying, girl, you need to sit your behind down. Like you doing too much, right? And you weren't listening. And then you start having migraines. Okay. Yeah. You may need to take off, a day of work. You may need to take off more days. You may need to increase your hydration. You may need to increase your walks, right? It's really about this communication with your body. And so when I call it redefine, like redefine your self-care, my hope is to really help people redefine and get out of this place of self-care being commercialized and us having resentment about what it is, so that we can actually take care of ourselves, kind of, get out of that capitalistic, commercialized like way that we see self-care.
Yeah. And
And we can do it in the world.
you mentioned something about like the self-care you're already doing. Can we talk some about like the self-care that we maybe aren't giving ourselves credit for?
Yeah, I think that when I talk about this, I usually go with a like a 6 point uh framework that I talk about is hammer. So
Uh-huh.
to kids, funny. So we want to hammer away at the beliefs that we have about self-care. And so that H stands for hydration. I talk
Mhm.
about hydration a lot. There are three different types of hydration that I talk about. Hydration is not just liquid hydration or drinking water. It is also in taking water-filled foods, right? And we probably eat vegetables and fruits all day, right? However, if we're in whispers and we're transferring from whispers to, yells, and we notice that, we may need to eat more oranges.
Mhm.
We may need more, a different type of hydration. And so with hydration, I talk about liquid hydration, I talk about water-filled foods, and I also talk about like hydrating your fascia with different connective tissue work. And so that's one of the things that people may already be doing. People may already be doing rolling. If it's not, it's something that you can add to, your self-care plan. And so eating and drinking water is something that we already do. It's just, how are we noticing it's changing, with how our body is responding.
Can you give a quick breakdown for people who don't know about fascia?
Yes, fascia is our connective tissue. It's the organ in our body. It's the second largest organ in our body, next to skin, right along with skin. And it's a thing that protects, supports, and stabilizes us. And so it connects every area of our body. I love fascia. I see fascia as the universe in our body. It is so fascinating. It's been understudied in the last 20 years, it's been studied more. It literally responds to it responds to movement and to vibrations, and it helps to move and support our lymph and our lymphatic system. And so it's the thing that dries out when we're as therapists, or I just talk as therapists, as we're sitting for long periods of time, or holding tension, as maybe a client is talking about some really tough things that they've gone through, and we're sitting there in empathy and compassion. So it's the tissues that hold everything together, but also the tissue that gets brittle if we don't move it enough in order to hydrate it. And so this is usually responsible for like, injuries, aches, aches and pains, inflammation. All of that has to do with fascia. But I hope that was that helpful.
That's great. Yeah, it's a great
Okay.
breakdown. Because I think some people have probably heard of it, you know, and but not really understood how it relates to emotion.
Right. It's the part of our body that holds the muscles together. It's the part that holds the joints together. It holds the tendons together. It's and it's it moves through like fluid. It has this interstitial fluid. And so if we're in a place where we're holding a lot of tension, it squeezes the fascia juice out. It's interstitial fluid, but it squeezes that fluid out. And if we don't do movement or different types of exercises to get that part moving, then that is when we can have injuries and conditions, illnesses, things like that.
hmm Okay, got it.
I know. It's like going to self-care school, right?
Right? Absolutely. Which I mean, not something I ever got in school. Right? I mean, not talked about in my social work program, definitely not talked about when I was coming up in public school. Like these are not things that were discussed. Um, and not things that were really visibly modeled for us by the adults in our lives. Like I'm sure that my parents had some self-care practices, but they weren't ever pointed out or labeled as such.
Mhm.
Um,
I'm willing to bet. As I go back and think, I don't know if, I mean, I'm sure my mom did, they probably were things like working to get rid of stress.
uh-huh.
She was a single mom, and so she had to do those things, but it really was not, we didn't go on vacation. She was a single
hmm
parent, and didn't have the money to do that. And so, I would have to think really hard. The only thing my mom modeled really well was working.
hmm Yeah. I think
That's what
about, I'm curious how hobbies or pleasure-based activities, like my dad's a musician. So every like weekend morning, my memories are like waking up hearing him playing like guitar in the living room.
Yeah.
I wonder how that comes in as with self-care. Like I'm thinking about all these body-based things.
Mhm.
Where do hobbies play a role?
I like to call that a category of like leisure and enjoyment because those are important and very useful for self-care. Uh, but that is I would probably not say body based because body based is a
Mhm.
type of self-care. Enjoyment and leisure is usually going to come from the different types of hormones that are released because of the feelings that you get when you do the activity, right?
Mhm.
And so, if he is, doing scales or working on, particular, sheet or something like that, he's probably going to get dopamine. I think it's dopamine when it's task oriented and you accomplish, if he's feeling good about it and he's like, dang, I finally got this, he's, it's going to be serotonin. If you all come in the living room and start jumping up and down and dancing or something, he's going to get a little dose of oxytocin. And so that is self-care if you focus it a little bit on body base. And so, but that I would probably say that that's more so focused on the, happy, uh, constructive, healthy hormones that are excreted when you're doing that
Mhm.
activity. Does that make sense?
It does. And I'm curious about like your mom, um, like modeling work as self-care, which I think in the self-care world, we say like work is not self-care. It can't be self-care. Like in kind of
Mhm.
but I know that there are times when work is self-care for me, and there are times when I'm pretending like work is self-care for me. I don't exactly know the line. I just know it when I feel it. Can we talk some
Right.
about that dynamic?
Yeah, I would probably, so say for instance, if we were in a consultation and we were talking about this, the number one thing I would go to is what is your body telling you? How do you know? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so how can we create this level of awareness? Like, are you feeling tension? Are you feeling that there is pressure, when you're doing the actual thing that you're doing? Because our body is literally, it's communicating. It's saying, you know what, if you want to do this thing, we can do it together. However, I need water, I need hydration, I need rest, I need movement, in order. And this is where our conditions are coming from. It's just a natural thing. We're just so far removed from it because of the world that we live in. And it'll
Yeah.
get increasingly so because 7G, I'm sure is like down the road a couple years from now, and so
Hmm.
it's convenient and I enjoy it. I like listening to YouTube in my car, uh, and also we have negative effects. And so I would say that, versus the enjoyment, or that you may get from accomplishing like the things on your to-do list, because sometimes we are pushing ourselves,
Hmm.
right? We're pushing ourselves. But if we're so focused in the task that we're doing that we can't have the awareness in our body, then that is where I probably would draw the line.
Got it. Okay.
And it just comes from awareness, which is, if we go back to like the number one bullet, why is having a plan necessary is because it really creates the awareness of, oh my goodness, my shoulders are tight. I
Hmm.
have this pain in my neck. Like, what is up with that? I get up to walk and I got to count to three before I can walk with a good stride.
Hmm.
I get up in the morning and I walk and I have to walk on the sides of my feet. I can't like I used to be able to get up and just like walk to the bathroom. Or, I may be getting up to use a bathroom 2 or 3 times a night. A lot of people notice that a lot more when they get more stressed is that you're using the bathroom more at night.
Hmm.
Um, so it's kind of those things that come up that you can list in your self-care plan and then just be aware of it.
Yeah.
Is that helpful?
Yeah, it's helpful. I'm wondering, like, okay, so let's say we create a self-care plan. It sounds like we need to hit on some body-based stuff, hit on some leisure and enjoyment. Are there other categories that we need to make sure is a part of our plan?
So I think we were talking about what we were talking. I feel like we were talking about the categories where I talked about hammer. And so
Oh,
we talked,
yeah.
yep. So we were talking about the H. We look at hydration. Now I
Hmm.
always try to start people like right there so you can get a good baseline of what's happening and then we can expand upon that. So when you look at hydration, the 3 different types of hydration, we can get into that. But usually if you ask someone, do you feel like you're hydrated? They're like, I drank, I'm supposed to drink 3 bottles or whatever, 3 containers, and I only had a half of one today because I was so busy. They usually know when they're hydrated or not. The next one is air or really breath. And so, how are you breathing throughout the day? Are you taking moments to literally, release your diaphragm, breathing through your diaphragm, or are you breathing through your chest? Are you breath holding? Are you, having very shallow breaths? And the reason this is important is because if we're breathing, shallow, very fast, the body just sees it as a threat. When the body sees something as a threat, whether the threat is there, it's perceived or real, if it's a threat, it's a threat, right?
Right.
We try to say, okay, is it perceived or is it real? And they're like, it's real to me.
Uh-huh.
Our body is going to tense up. And so if our body is tensing up, then we're having the whole issue with fascia and all those things. And so checking in to see like what type of breathing exercises that you need. Are you breathing throughout the day? Do you need to, set an alarm for breathing, to help sustain, breath in your life?
Mm-hmm.
Be really helpful. That next letter in hammer is M, and I like to say movement. If I just get short and dirty with it, we need movement to move our lymph in our body, and our lymph is the fluid in our lymphatic system. It doesn't, and if we look at the lymphatic system like we look at the circulatory system, they're mirrored. The only difference is that the circulatory system has a heart. It pumps the blood. Difference with our lymphatic system is it doesn't. So it requires movement often in order to move, the hormones through, to move oxygen through, to move those different things. And so, what is your movement looking like during the day? It's pretty useful for therapists because we can do 5 sessions in a day and we're literally sitting for 5 hours, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so how do you get the movement in can be helpful. And so assessing that is important. The other thing is micronutrient deficiencies, which we have so many of those happening. And so checking in with your nutrient deficiencies that may be there, like iron supplements, and vitamin D, B12, those types of things that you may have had in the past and, may be contributing to the things that you need to be aware of. To change your energy patterns. And then that leads to the E, which is energy patterns. And so when you wake up in the morning, this is really about the natural energy patterns that we have. And so are we having to do things that create energy and create us to calm down, like coffee and wine,
Mm-hmm.
If you're having to do that, then we just may need to look at something in the self-care plan that may help or assist in that, so that you don't have to take like 2 coffees in the morning, which is not a terrible thing, but if it's a problem, it's an issue for you, right?
Right.
It may not be an issue. So like when we do a self-care plan, like individualized plan for someone, then it may not be an issue, but if it is, it is. And and then that last R is rest, which is my biggest offender, because I am literally like if you look at human design, I'm like the manifesting generator. I get all
Same.
the done. I have all these ideas, and sleep kind of sometimes it gets in the way.
Mm-hmm.
Also, it's important. So those are the things that I would probably say that people can be mindful of if you look at like the framework of hammer, in assessing and attuning to your self-care. Because as we go through that list, we may say, oh, okay, so I know that my minimum amount of water that I need to drink is I don't know, 16 glasses a day. And it may change and shift as we have clients. Because I will tell you, as I have different trauma sessions that I'm having, I need literally 8 to 12 ounces of water just for that session.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Oh, it is a lot. Yeah. I'm curious about the energy pattern one. Would self-care include kind of optimizing your life where you can around your natural energy patterns?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly it, which is why we would look at that, right? And so, sometimes people are just, not they, because I mean, I'm there, which is how I even created most of this,
Right.
is we're just on a train,
Mm-hmm.
we kind of get in zombie land sometimes when, we get up, we do the things that we do, and, we take our stimulants in the morning, whatever that is, and we feel kind of not so great throughout the day. We have to take more stimulants, and then, and then we have to figure out how to round that out at night. And so we take a, Tylenol PM or Benadryl, or, one or two glasses of wine, or we never calm down. We just kind of figure out, like, how do we go to sleep when we're buzzed up? And so we end up on our phone, in the bed on our phone. And so when we look at that, and if that's something that, we want to change, then we incorporate, okay, so how can we do this a little bit differently? How can we, help the energy patterns? And one of those things is usually, hands down, people usually have a micronutrient deficiency that's happening.
Yeah. And I'm thinking, like, my brain is best early in the morning. Like, I will often work from 5 to 7 in the morning, and I can get like 6 hours of afternoon work during those 2 hours. Like, my brain is just so much more on fire, and my brain is mostly useless after like 7 p.m. And I know it.
Right. And so that would go in your plan. Yeah. That would, something like that will also go in your plan. I love that.
Yeah. And thinking about like therapists in private practice, like if you're sharpest or most resilient or something like that in the morning, like let's say 9 a.m., like maybe that's when you try to schedule your clients who are a heavier lift.
And not, Friday at 4:00.
Exactly.
I'm not, because I've been there.
No, certainly none of us have been there. Yeah. Okay. So using Hammer to kind of think through. Now, here's where this is a pattern, Alexis, like this is where I get stuck.
Okay.
Then I'm like, I have to do every one of these things every single day without fail, or I am not doing it right.
Right. And that's why we back up and try to help with validation, right? You just have that, and you notice like what is coming up in your body. And I really want to, I just want to change the mindset of people who think that we have to do this. That is a very like achievement, goal oriented thought process, that we have to do all the things, and then we end up not doing a whole lot. It may be that today, you're feeling buzzy in your tissues, or you have like lightheadedness. And so maybe today you just maybe try to increase, your hydration and put a little Himalayan salt in your water, or maybe you take a electrolyte packet, or something like that. You don't have to hit all the things. The focus is, how can we listen to our body so that we know what to do? And if we listen and notice that, okay, I have a headache, or I have muscle tension, or, I have a little incontinence, because that happens. We do get therapist bladder. I have a little incontinence. So what do I need to do? Do I need to focus on just like moving more today? And so, walking to the bathroom more. It doesn't have to be like all the things at one time. And my hope is that people have, some relax around that. I feel like our culture does push us to feel like we have to do all the things, and we really don't. The only thing we really need to do is listen.
Right. Because I'm thinking about how if I were to do them all in one day, like
it's too much.
It's no longer self-care. It's more obligations. It's like squeezing out my time more and more, to where I can't really rest aside from sleep because there isn't time to do that.
Right. And I think part of that is the dilemma of where we are too in the world, is that, I mean, low key self-care is work.
Yeah.
It's no different from, either we do it along the way and we have more longevity, or we do it when we have no choice.
Right.
So it is a necessity. However, the more we do it, the more innate it becomes, the more it becomes part of our routine. It's the more we, if we're getting up and we're doing affirmations in the morning, or we're getting up, we're doing, meditation, or our morning walk, we're also getting up and filling up our water bottle, or thinking about, trimmering. Trimmering is one of the things that I advocate for, that, therapists for sure, but people in general do. It becomes a way of life.
Wait, what is trimmering?
Yes, trimmering is an intervention by David Berselli, and it is trauma release exercises. And it is the way that I love it. It's something that I started 2 years ago as part of just, I was curious about it. And I was having chronic sciatica from the stress of just community mental health. And also, at the very end of that, starting my private practice, it was just so much for me. And I found tremoring and then, later on, fascia work interventions. And it's a way that just like our body has a stress response. So we all know about fight, flight, freeze. Our body also has a natural way that we recover from that. It's like automatic, and it's tremoring, it's shaking. And so, for example, if anyone has ever been really angry, or if you've been really angry or emotional about something, and then you just kind of feel like this internal tremor or shaking happens, that is just your body telling you. Remember, I said your body is always communicating and letting you know things. That's your body saying, whatever is happening, we need to discharge this. We need to get it out. We need to vibrate it out. The thing is, it's because of the world we live in. We see that as a weakness, as something is wrong with me. I don't want people to see that I'm affected by something. And so over millennia, literally, we have just squeeze this in, and we've not responded to that. And so tremoring is a set of exercises that we do in order to allow our body to do what it's naturally meant to do, which is shake. I mean, we are mammals. If anyone has a puppy, they shake all the time. They have no problem shaking. You'll turn around every time you hear that the chain going off because they're shaking, and they're just discharging like whatever is there. And so it's a really great way to tremor, to do self-care, is to tremor.
Awesome.
I haven't had sciatica in 2 years since I've done that.
Wow.
It's amazing. And when I feel sciatica coming on, because maybe, and I'm in that tier 2 headed to tier 3, right? Because we naturally go between like the whispers and the loud talking. I do some tremoring or melting or something like that. And it's literally, I get up and it's gone. And the body's like, thank you, bitch.
Yes. I listened this time.
Next week, I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. So let's say we've gone through Hammer and we have designated the things that we believe work for us.
Maybe 1 or 2. Yeah.
Yeah. How do we make sure we use this self-care plan?
One of the ways, if it's visible to you, number one is that we create some intention around it. And so, if you're doing yearly goals or quarterly goals, see if you can incorporate that in that goal timing that you're doing, so that it can become a process that you do at the same time that you do some of the other things. It's almost like what is that habit? The habit book. It's almost like habit stacking.
Yeah.
Yes. So you want to do it you want to do that together. And the other thing is that we live in a digital world, and so make it easily accessible. Just make it digital. And so I have people just create a note in their phone or put it in Google Docs, so that it's accessible. You can, make a time, put a time on your calendar where a really perfect time, if people want to do this quarterly. I would say, I'm always looking at not actually looking at my self-care plan, because I know it, right? But I will revisit it quarterly. But initially, sometimes looking at it monthly can be really helpful. So making it easily accessible and digital, so that you can pull it up and then and add things, and making it dynamic, can be so useful. I was driving, I think, a couple weeks ago, and I don't know what happened or what, but I noticed that I haven't had a cold sore in a really long time. And I was like, what? Because cold sores it's right at the start of 3. It's like, okay, if you're not listening, we're about to impact how your face looks.
Right.
So I haven't had that in a long time. And I'm like, okay, I need to put that in my self-care plan because it's ever evolving. It's, it's always changing. It means that I'm doing something right. Even though I'm not doing it every day, it means that when I get to that point where it's like yelling or loud talking to me, that I'm doing something in order to back it down and discharge it. So, I would say to make sure that that you can do it is to make it accessible, to make it digital, and to stack it with something else that you're doing.
Okay.
Already.
Yeah. And I
Does that
love,
help? Like if you think about like your self-care, would that be something that would help for you?
yeah, yeah. I think part of the struggle for me sometimes is the motivation to do it. When the pull of scrolling my phone is there instead. Like I can do this thing that I know is better for me, that also like I know, but it takes effort.
It
And
does.
sitting down and scrolling takes no effort and is not good for me.
Right.
How do you usually help people like make the right decision more of the time?
So, I go back to, I know I'm a broken record. I go back to listen to your body because I mean, should we be scrolling? Probably not. Should we be consuming as much as I do? Probably not. And also, I do have a plan where I know that if my body is saying, you know what, you scrolled so much, and the whole time you were scrolling, you had your shoulders up, and then you ran past this war or whatever that's happening, or something that happened 2 years ago. We got an election coming up, like that,
Hmm.
like all those things. And because of that, like you got bubble guts now. Now you can't sleep. You're all anxious and can't figure out, like, why you can't get comfortable. Right. So, yes, do we know that we could be doing something else other than scrolling? Yes. And also, when we do that thing, if we're listening to our body, we can respond
Hmm.
to what we need to do. And so if I'm noticing that, I may get up and do like a back of skull shearing or something like that. Or I may, massage the back of, the back of my ears and my jaw and my temples. I may do humming. I may do some singing in order to just, help my diaphragm release. I may do some of those things, and all these things take less than a minute. It's just responding to like, okay, what is here? And so that's kind of another like dig, if you will, or flag around, how can we validate the process of being human? Because
Hmm.
sometimes scrolling is fun, and sometimes we need to just veg out and just not think about anything, but we also want to think about 5 minutes, 100 images.
Right. Yeah. Versus like if I spent the same amount of time reading a book, like just the
Yep.
way my brain and my body feel in the same 5 minute span of reading a book versus scrolling, it's drastically different.
Right. And
Um,
here's another thing too. When we are in the place where where we just feel like we need to scroll, that is also a sign.
right.
It's
Yes.
it's just a sign, right? And if
Hmm.
we could know that and not really put shame or anything to it, but just some compassion around, I had a really hard day. I'm out here doing a whole lot in the world to change this vibration in the world. And so if this is what I need to do right now, then this is what I'm going to need. This is what I'm going to do. And if it is also causing some stress, I'm attuned to my body enough where I can figure something out. A lot of times, where I'm noticing that people get frustrated with their self-care plan is they don't have enough self-care things to do. It's just, building the awareness of the simple things that you can do in order to discharge stress from your body.
Hmm. So that's an interesting point is like if you like having a list of things that work for you without looking at it like a to-do list, but like a
Mhm.
choose one. And taking some of that pressure off so it doesn't become one or many things that you're now obligated to do to be a responsible adult.
I
Um,
know. I know.
yeah.
It's a mind shift change, isn't it?
It really is.
Because we think of it, and it's really a kind of a sad thing. We think of it as work, but we don't mind working. But the
Hmm.
working, takes a toll on our body. It's stuff that we love to do, and so it is a mind shift change. And anytime I'm working on mind shift change, I incorporate like gratitude and affirmations. And so, how can you affirm that? Which is, yes, yet another thing to do, right? And
Hmm.
also, we don't mind working. And so how can we shift, like if we're going to do this thing that we love to do and we want longevity, how can we make sure we get more longevity? And part of that is taking care of ourselves in a different way.
Hmm. Yeah. I'm thinking of like this, the very American way of like, there's no such thing as too much of a good thing, right? And
Mm-hmm.
how we really do have to have this mindset shift around like there is like too much of a good thing is too much of a good thing with self-care too. Like with,
Can be.
yeah.
Yeah, I think it can get overwhelming. And, you know, if we try to do too much, if that's happening, I would just say focus on three things that you can do in a day. So what
Hmm.
are three things that you want to do? And, you know, if you're waking up in the morning, you know, if we're rolling out of bed, that's a different story. Yeah, oftentimes that's the case because, you know, we tired out here, you
Hmm.
know, and you know, there is a demand for what we do on so many levels. Is, you know, maybe just begin focusing on your hydration, right?
Hmm.
And if you begin focusing on one thing and you notice that it's working, that shifts our motivation to do it more.
Hmm. Yeah. And I'm thinking it's okay probably to put the things you're already good at. Like I'm
All
great
the
at hydration. I could definitely roll more, but overall I'm great at hydration. So that's
right.
going to go on my list of three.
Period. It's going
Yeah.
to go on your list of three. And then, you know, if we look at hammer, you know, what are some breathing things that, you know,
Mhm.
is breathing a thing that you feel like you need to do? Like, are you holding your breath or, you know, breathing more shallow, or do we need to get more movement in? You
Mhm.
know, do we need to focus on rest? And, you know, it's, you just start thinking about that. Okay, these are just one or two things I'm already good at. I'm going to focus on that. And then, you know, you start noticing other things that are coming up and you try to attend to that based on
Mhm.
what your body is saying.
Yeah. And I like that it can just be like you notice that you're holding your breath or you're like taking really shallow breaths. So you could just take some deep belly breaths. That's fine. You don't have to go do like a 5 minute
Yoga,
Wim Hof video or something like that, you know? Like
you really don't.
it
You
can
just
just
need
be
to breathe.
simple.
Just simple. And one of the techniques in male is to really activate that diaphragm, because that's just a direct connection to the vagus nerve. Is you know, you breathe in, you just take an inhale, and then as you exhale, you just do the sh sound, which is shh, and you do it until there's no more air in your belly, and you go on about your day. That
Hmm.
is how you incorporate self-care, and it becomes it
Yeah.
doesn't become a chore. It becomes something that is a friend almost.
Hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. So I'm a singer, and both my kids are really into musical theater, and they're young, and I've taught my 10-year-old how to do like diaphragmatic breathing, which is
Mhm.
it's vital for singing. Like that's where all your air comes from.
Sure.
My 7-year-old has a really hard time, except when doing shh. Like that's when she can really connect with getting her belly full.
Mhm.
So it's interesting to me that like I find the fewer podcasts I listen to in the car and the more music I listen to and sing along with, my
Mhm.
stress is less intense.
Number two.
Yep.
That's number
Yep.
two.
Hmm.
Hydration is one. Singing is number two, right?
Done. Love it.
Right. And so this is how it begins. And you start thinking, okay, you know, I'm feeling a certain kind of way. My body is, you know, showing up in a different way. The whispers are there.
Hmm.
These are the day to day. Maybe I need to do a little bit more singing.
Yeah. And so
Stress is going to
these,
happen.
right, exactly. Like the stressors will be there. And this speaks too to like reviewing your self-care plan, which we've touched on a little bit of like knowing when to change it, like knowing when maybe you need to increase it, or like how do we know if we increase what we're doing and do more, or when we need to shift something? Is there
Yeah.
ever a thing where it's like maybe I need to focus less on hydration and instead do movement? Like how do we know?
I would say the different signs that your body is giving you, right?
Hmm.
And it's really tailored to the individual. So, say for instance, for me, I will, you know, I focus on either like headaches that I may be having. Not only for me, a lot of the people that I work with just have so many examples of this. Is a pretty common theme.
Hmm.
So it may be like headaches. It is this feeling of fuzziness, like not, you know, lack of, you know, the inability to concentrate, or a clumsiness that some people may feel. It's just like this overall fuzziness. Thirst is also sometimes there, but not always there. And if you're feeling that and you say, okay, let me check in. I know that I'm feeling a little bit different. I'm not feeling my optimal self. So what needs to happen? And based on what you put down, you will know, you know, kind of what you need to do. It's
Hmm.
kind of it depends.
Right,
It's
right.
the answer of like it depends, but it really is based on like what is showing up in your body. If you're noticing that you have tension from sitting in a compressed seated position all day, then you may want to do some squats. You may want to do some rolling. You may want to do some like scraping of the skin or moving that lymphatic system, or bilateral stimulation or something like that. It really does take the initial time of sitting down and seeing like what is your body communicating to you.
Hmm.
Yeah. So I would ask you, how do you know you need water?
I don't know that I ever get to a point where I need water. I'm just so in the habit of drinking
So
all the
beautiful.
time. Yeah. And I mean, it's been this way since high school.
Yeah.
That it's just never occurred to me not to drink water all day long.
Right.
But I definitely feel it around movement. Like I can tell when I haven't gotten enough movement, I get a little twitchy.
Mhm.
And
What do you do to
achy.
get less twitchy?
Sometimes I'll get up and I'll do squats or I'll do like a little micro walk around the block until I can devote more time and energy to getting more consistent movement because that's my biggest struggle lately. It's always something different, but my new phase of self-care struggle is like to like get up out of my chair and move. And so I've started because I'm best in the morning. I've started doing like 15 minutes of movement in the morning just to get me started off with that in mind every day. And it's
Yeah, it's a
nothing
great.
intense. It's just like, so like I don't talk myself out of it because if it was really intense, I would. And
Yeah.
it's not a huge time commitment. Like
Yep.
15 minutes, there's no excuse I can make up for 15 minutes,
Yeah.
you know? So it gets right under my threshold of all of my objections. So it gets done.
Right. Right. And it doesn't even have to be 15 minutes. I mean, you could do three, yes, you're gonna give me a
Yeah.
side eye, but you could do like three burpees or, like you say, some squats or something vigorous in a very
Mhm.
short amount of time to just get the blood pumping. That
Yeah.
is really your body just, when you feel the tension, that's your body saying, hey, I need something different.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Mhm.
I like noticing what, like, I feel like my body will tell me based on where it feels tight or twitchy, like what needs my attention.
Mm.
And so I'll often do that. Like if I'm feeling tense in my shoulders, I'll do mainly like shoulder work,
Mhm.
or like shoulder stretches.
Shoulder stretches, yeah,
Yeah.
and I incorporate a lot of connective tissue work around
Mhm.
that. If you have a ball, you can put it up against the wall and like
Hmm.
roll on the ball. And so these are all ways that you just, and they're really quick. They're not
Hmm.
anything that takes a lot of time, but if we get into the habit of listening to the subtle changes in our body, then we do have more longevity and we can do the things that we love doing with, optimized energy, vitality, and that we feel good about.
Hmm. Yeah.
Really the goal.
Well, I'm thinking about like age and stage, which we've also touched on a bit, but like me in 20 years.
Mhm.
And so there's this, I have two things in my mind about what I'm going to be like in 20 years. It's going to be like, oh, I'll be retired and just doing like leisurely, pleasurely things all the time. And I will not need to like focus so much on self-care. I love the idea in my head that I would ever actually retire. Like I will create another business. I will do some, like it's not in my DNA really.
I feel you 100%. I'm like, oh, I don't know about that, but
Yeah, yeah. But like my schema of what retirement looks like is that like it's all gardening and tea with friends and things like that. And then I also have the like, where will my body be?
Mhm.
And what will my self-care need to look like to keep me mobile and balanced and like physically balanced and all the things that I see as really important for like physical health when I'm older. And how some of the body based, like some of the like fascia stuff, some of the like I imagine myself doing balance work while also knowing that needs to be happening now in order to do it and for it to like work out then. But just thinking about how age and stage, I will no longer have small children in the house. I will probably not own three businesses at once. I will, like
Right.
continue to have a really wonderfully full social life.
Mhm.
It's one of my goals to maintain. but how these things, I don't know if I'm going to need more or less or different self-care in 20 years than I have now.
So you focus on what you need now.
Yeah. Yeah. And just being open to
You
it being
focus on
fluid.
Yep, you focus on what you need now, and then once you get there, you'll see if, the things that have worked for you continue to work, or if you need to find something different.
Hmm.
Uh, I mean, it's like I like to say it does take work, and
Hmm.
I don't want it to be, my hope is not for it to be like another thing on people's list, but also thinking like, if you want to get to that place that you're envisioning, how can you take care of yourself a little differently so that you can get there with ease and have longevity and feel good when you
Hmm.
get there. So age and stage is a big difference. And it's more about the stage that you have in life versus the age. Now, age, some things we're just not able to do. Sometimes we have hormonal shifts and changes that are going to, impact that. However, if, say, for instance, someone is 30, and they've been working, shelling out life, since they were 14 or 15,
Hmm.
the stage of life when they get to 30 may be that they're completely burnt out. They need to rest, right? And so at that stage of their life, they need something different. And we have those keystone, ages, reaching, those milestones in life. You're reaching college, and, your quarter year and, or quarter life, I think it is. And, and then you hit your 30s and 45, and, retirement age and, family time, like all of those markers that we have, you need different things in your life. And so the stages I feel like are more important than the actual age, because
Yeah.
it's whatever stage you're at, you're putting a certain amount of something out into the world, and, in order to live. And so as
Right.
a result of that, you have different stressors, and your body is like, okay, what do we need to do differently
Hmm.
in
And
order to,
thinking about too, like the traumas that happen through life that you cannot expect, they just happen. And some that are expected, like when my parents pass, that will be a trauma for me. And knowing that that's gonna happen, no matter how much I want to pretend it won't, and that my self-care will need to look different then.
it will.
Um, and knowing that the unexpected things that have come up throughout my adult life that I did not expect to have to manage, deal with, like get through. Um,
Right.
those times were times that I could have, had I known to, focus some more on different kinds of self-care to help buoy me through those times.
Yeah. I mean, and it's part of, like, if we can stack it with the goals that we set in our life, then we're able to adapt and shift in a way where we have more longevity and we can do the things that we love.
Hmm.
Um, but if we see it as work, what we're attracting is work.
Hmm.
So it's a mind shift, and my hope is that, people and, professionals, mainly therapists, because, they're my jam,
Hmm.
see the benefit of, putting some time and work into, thinking about what is your body telling you, how is your body showing up, really after certain sessions. There's some sessions before I started doing this work, and still it will happen, and I will notice it, and I will get to a relaxed body state. That's a, way of caring for yourself when you're working. I will be in an entire session and my butt cheeks are clenched the entire session, and I don't even notice. And then I get up and I'm walking sideways,
Yeah.
or I have hip pain. I can't figure out why my hips are hurting so much. It's because you squeeze your butt cheeks the whole time, during the session. Or, I'm also a brain spotting clinician and consultant. And, we hold that, we hold that pointer from
Hmm.
sometimes really long periods of time. And, we're in this position, and sometimes we feel like this necessity to not move because we want to hold the space for the client. And that also creates, like, if I'm holding the pointer here, my hands are all, crunched up and I'm not moving. It,
Hmm.
it creates more, compression and tension in the body. So what can I do in order to discharge that?
Yeah.
You
I
know?
love this. Like, I love your perspective of like it's work. And earlier you're like, and we like work or we're fine with work. And it's
No
true,
problem.
like, because we're all,
No problems. Yeah.
yeah, like, and it's not just you and I like work, like the people listening like work too.
Yeah.
We have this societal thing that we hate work. But it depends on what work.
If
And
it
if,
fuels us, we love
yeah,
it.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So I
Yeah.
love the shift instead of just being like, it should be easy, that like maybe it becomes easy at some point. Maybe it does become like me and water, right?
Yeah.
But
That's get it.
it doesn't start that way.
It doesn't, but it's almost kind of like, I hate to give the example of like weight at the beginning of the year because everybody does that. But so say for instance, or let's just say exercise, it doesn't have to be connected to weight, right? If someone wants to exercise, or start a different, exercising, regimen, we have to start somewhere. It's the
Mhm.
hardest part is
Yeah.
actually getting up that morning or and walking or coming home from work or walking or walking in the middle of the day. We actually have to start doing it.
Absolutely. Oh, so good. Thank you so much, Alexis.
I love talking about self-care. I hope
Yes.
that from this conversation that people will just listen to what your body is trying to say because it is a
Yes.
constant communication. Your body is on this ride with you, and it is all about keeping us alive and in a place of equilibrium.
Mhm.
It just wants us to listen to it more.
Yes, absolutely. And we have another, if you're into this conversation, we have another one with Alexis you should check out.
Yay.
And yay. Awesome. Well, I'll see you
Yes,
soon.
okay.
Bye. I hope that broadened your clinical horizons. Head over to notboringces.com to get your CE credit. Want to have a not boring conversation with me about your clinical area of expertise? You can apply there too. If you like this conversation, leave us a 5-star review, tell a friend, and be sure to subscribe for future conversations.